Hi! This time I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games that do not use any sort of tool or randomizer. That is, no dice, no cards, no tokens, no anything, no nothing. So, this is because I recently created a poll in my community tab section to see how many of you had played these sorts of not even diceless, like tool-less RPGs. And there were quite a few of you that have never played those sorts of role-playing games. And some of you were actually a bit curious about them. So this time I'm going to share what they are all about. So, as mentioned, they do not use dice, cards. You don't have any sort of randomizer or tool to handle the tasks, checks, all of that. There are no rolls, there are no draws. So some people could be thinking, how do you handle this? Is this sort of like a LARP, like a Mind's Eye Theater, World of Darkness, all World of Darkness, whatever sort of play? In these types of RPGs, in this type of RPGs, you only have stats and values for your player character. You create your player character almost like any other tabletop role-playing game. Some of the diceless systems may actually require dice when it comes to creation, but not when it comes to the task resolution. But do you resolve tasks? How do you handle checks? By using the interpretation based on the description of the player characters. It's all based on context. You use those values of the created player characters to see if those numbers can match or handle the difficulties presented in the different tasks. So let's say that you have a character with a strength of 9. That's your strength. And perhaps you have another bonus related to a skill. The skill of heavy lifting. Let's put it like that. So let's say you have, like I said, a strength of 9 plus 2 of heavy lifting. You could say that it's 11 in total. When your character attempts to do something, maybe the character tries to lift this sort of huge boulder. The player describes his or her character's action. The game master looks at the difficulty, or maybe you are running things in an improvised way, and you determine that the difficulty for lifting that stone is 14. It is above the value of 9, or even the plus 2 of the heavy lifting, which would be 11. It is beyond that, so the task is not possible. The character tries to pick it up, but it's too heavy. It cannot be done. That's why in those situations you usually require the cooperation of another party in the group. Another member of the party. So both of them could add their strength and their skill together, and they will be able to lift that stone, possibly. This applies to any other check. There are some role-playing games like this that do not use physical tools, that have resources, sort of like points, that you can spend to activate special abilities, that you can employ to boost your normal attributes or skills. So it's a different experience, but in both cases there is a great emphasis in the interpretation of the actions. The game master, in order for this to work, the game master needs to have a clear idea of the difficulties. Maybe you write down some guidelines before the session starts, like if they try to lift a stone, it's difficulty 14. If they try to decipher some ancient manuscript, it's difficulty 17. Things like that. So it's very simple, as you can see. After creating your character, you have these values that serve as guidelines to see if your actions are successful or not. That's it. But I think there are some pitfalls if you're not careful. For example, oftentimes the ideas that the player has when it comes to using his or her stats in particular tasks they might be a bit different when compared to the way that the game master is handling things or rationalizing things according to his or her own perception of the game world. So maybe you are piloting something, a vehicle that requires, you could say, perhaps great dexterity or great intelligence because the controls are quite complex. Maybe it's an alien vehicle. So which one is it? Are you going to use intelligence or intelligence-based skills to drive that vehicle? Or are you going to use agility and agility-based skills? The player could be like, I get on the vehicle and start to drive it towards the exit. Or I turn it on and start to drive it towards the exit. My dexterity is 13. And the game master could be like, tell me your intelligence. And the player could be like, but I am using dexterity, that's the required stat. And the game master, no, it's intelligence because the controls are quite complex. So you see, you can get into those sorts of situations. So there are several ways on handling this. I'm just going to give you a few tips. One way would be to always give priority to the game master. The player could suggest this skill, like I said, my skill is 13. And the game master could be like, give me your intelligence value, and that's it. Like the game master negates that situation. Another way, it could be to offer 2 or 3 of your stats or values to the game master. I'm piloting this vehicle, I'm driving this vehicle, I have dexterity 13 and intelligence of 12. Now the game master gets to decide which skill and skill sets apply based on that information. The game master doesn't need to communicate this to the player in order to keep the flow of the game, to enhance the immersion. It's all about that. So no matter how you handle it, maybe you can think of other more simpler ways of handling things. Let me know in the comment section. But it's all about keeping the flow of the session, promoting the immersion. But there are certainly ways in which you can interpret this. It's not as difficult as it may seem at first. In fact, I would say that the strength of a tabletop role-playing game that doesn't employ these sorts of randomizers is that the flow of play is considerably faster. In some cases, the story that is created because of the actions benefits from this because logic and all sorts of mental arguments in favor of the actions and reactions and the effects take priority. Because when it comes to randomizers, when you roll your dice, there is always a chance of failure or tremendous failure or success or greater success. Depending on the system, there is also a lot of granularity. You can also employ your own version of granularity, even within systems that do not have that implicitly stated in the rulebook. Maybe you enjoy playing D20 based systems, and depending on the result, this was for example handled in Pathfinder Unchained for first edition. You had these values that if the roll is just 5 points below the needed to hit the opponent, what was needed, you still deal a point of damage. So maybe you can apply that on the fly or beforehand, write down some notes that when I'm making this roll, if they roll this below this value, this happens, or above this value, this other thing happens. Or like I said, maybe you want to go full Dave Arneson and improvise on the spot. But when it comes to avoiding those tools, those randomizers, etc., it's all about your interpretation, the narration, the description. I also think that this is perfect for an online session. And like I said, as long as you handle it with the tips that I have mentioned, that the player wants to do this and the player communicates perhaps 2 or 3 stats to the game master, and the game master gets to decide which one of those skills or stats or whatever. So yes, I hope this clears things out when it comes to diceless, cardless, tokenless RPG systems. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And for those of you that have played diceless systems, cardless systems, etc., please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Did you like the experience? Did you dislike it? How could you improve the experience, etc.? Well, thanks once again for watching my videos. Thank you for your likes and your comments. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you, and see you later.